Fire away.
All righty, welcome everyone. My name is Dave Patrick. This is my talk, Intro to CDS. No, wait a minute. Intro to DataFlex. No, that's not right. Intro to Dataverse inside of Microsoft Flow. Well, wait a minute. Inside of Power Automate. So I'm having a little bit of fun, of course. This talk is actually Intro to Dataverse inside of Power Automate, but Microsoft likes to change the names up on us as we go, and so I thought I would poke fun at them a little bit with all the different namings that they've had along the way. So a little bit about me. That's my Twitter handle. You can also find me at LinkedIn at David E. Patrick, and I'm trying to get on all the social media that the kids tell me about lately. So I'm on the Insta, I'm on the Snapchat, you know, all that stuff. But you know, I love when people tweet me as I go through my talk. As you know, we mentioned, feel free to put questions out in the chat if you want to raise your hand. But also you can tweet me questions afterwards, because I don't know about you guys. It's been a long day, a lot of great sessions, a lot of great information. The cup is pretty full of knowledge, and sometimes it takes a little while to digest all that knowledge, and then you say, gee, I wish I would have asked that question. Feel free to tweet me afterwards. I love getting homework. I am a Microsoft certified trainer, certified solution developer, solutions expert. I'm starting to forget what the letters stand for, MVP. It means I take a lot of Microsoft exams, so I'm a big certification junkie. If anyone's interested in certification and wants some tips, tricks, hints, thoughts, I'm always posting about cloud challenges that Microsoft loves to run, where you can get a free certification voucher if you do their challenge. So, please hit me up on Twitter about that. And I like to tweet about those things. I'm a big freebie swag kind of guy. There's my LinkedIn profile. Find out more about me. I teach a bunch of universities here. I'm in Maryland on the East Coast of the United States. So I teach at the University of Maryland, University of Towson, and Stevenson University. So a lot of times I'll say there'll be a pop quiz at the end, but it's been too long. It's a long day for you guys. I'll relinquish the pop quiz. When I do in person, I like to do pop quizzes, and I throw out prizes for right and wrong answers. But anyway. I work for a company called DSA, Data Systems Analyst, been around since 1963, so a little bit. I started there 10 years ago. I thought I'd be there 6 months, but 10 years later, I'm still there. I love it. If anyone wants to come join me, tinyurl.com/DSA job. We got lots of openings across the United States. I also run a user group, Mad SharePoint. So it stands for, officially, it's Mid-Atlantic Developers SharePoint. That's what I tell my boss it stands for. But secretly, those of us who have been working with SharePoint for a while, and I've been working with it since it came out in beta in 2000, know that sometimes SharePoint is delightful to work with. Sometimes it is, hey, add a field. I can add a field to a list very easily. It doesn't take me months. If I was, I used to be a ASP.NET developer, SQL Server database, and adding a field took a little bit of work. In SharePoint, it's a 5-minute fix, delightful. Other times, SharePoint can be challenging, where a workflow just suddenly stops working. One that used to work for months and months and months, one day just falls over with a mysterious error message, system error, or something along those lines. And you're just like, that's when you're mad at SharePoint and you want to throw it out the window. So hence my user group. One of the nice things about, if there is a nice thing about the situation we've been in over the last couple of years, is that we've gone completely virtual. So we've always been hybrid, but now that we're completely virtual, we've really started to attract people from all over the world. So that's nice. Anyone from anywhere can, and we're still, once we get back in person, which is getting closer, we're getting close. We plan to keep that up and completely, what we like to do is when we have our user group meetings, because we have done a couple of hybrid meetings, is we make people in the room get onto Teams as well as the people are remote. That way everyone has the same experience. Everyone has a fair, no one's just shouting out. We make them raise their hand in Teams, even if they're in the room. We think that makes a nice equal footing for our hybrid meetings. A little shout out for a TV episode, if you will. My daughter and I had this website called Patrick Perspective. It's basically a shortcut to our YouTube videos. And we have our season 1 of videos that she and I talk about. And, we kind of commiserate about different software development situations we find ourselves in. So if I bring it over here, I'll show you guys what it kind of looks like. And, complaining about Teams, complaining about not muting, and people that don't forget to unmute. I'm guilty. Our work with Tech Girls, we work with a group called Tech Girls, where we go out and do these workshops for young women to get them interested in STEM, trying to help bridge that gender gap. Lots of cool episodes. So go out, check it out. Episode 2, season 2 coming out soon. It's exciting. I've been having a lot of fun with that with her, and I'm proud of that. Proud papa there. All right, so what's this talk about? This is what is Dataverse. So, what is it? Why would you want to use it? How do you use it? Those are really the three main things. So we'll do a quick, not a quick demo. We got lots of time. We'll do a demo using Flow and Power Automate. Maybe we'll move some data from Dataverse into SharePoint or bring it down in Excel. We'll do some stuff. Maybe we'll show you how to bring it into Power BI so you can visualize some data that lives in Dataverse. I think I'm a big hands-on guy. I love working with something to learn it, to kind of taking it apart. So I think that'll be helpful. So we'll start with a little bit of foundational information. When Dataverse first came out, it was called the Common Data Service. And then for a hot second, Microsoft renamed it Microsoft Dataflex Pro, but apparently there were some licensing or trademark issues with that. So they renamed it to Dataverse, and that seemed to be available and catchy. So that's what we're with at the moment. And that's where you can find out more information about Dataverse. It's part of the Microsoft Power Platform. So, Office 365, Azure, Dynamics. Helps. There's data connectors for all sorts of data sources. Power BI can connect really easily to Dataverse. Power Apps, Power Automate, integrate it with, when I say integrated, I'm always, I work for my day job is a Department of Defense contractor for the Army, and they love their acronyms and they love their four-syllable words, and I hate that. I'm very down to earth. Please, please speak as plainly as possible. So, when we say integrated, we mean that if you click, in Dataverse and you click another link and it takes you to Power Apps, it's for the most part not going to ask you to sign in again. It should be single sign-on experience. It should connect from one to the other without much clicking, without much effort. So the integration, working with the Department of Defense, a lot of times we're working with a lot of other third-party tools. I was working with Adobe Lifecycle the other day, that old thing, IBM Same Time, and Doors, which is another product from IBM. They're not really integrated. It takes a lot of work to get those things to talk to each other, but not so in the Power Platform. We got true integration here, and working with Dataverse and Power Apps and Power Automate, it's a bit of a pleasure when you're not used to working in such an integrated environment. So, as we mentioned, and I'm going to reference, for those of you who haven't did any kind of diving into Microsoft Learn. Microsoft Learn is, people think it's Microsoft's documentation on the web, but it's so much more than that. I've got a slide in a minute here. I'm jumping ahead, but I do reference it a lot. And this is one of the articles from Microsoft Learn. I'll talk more about it when I get to the slide on it. What is Dataverse? Dataverse is, I'll just kind of rephrase what they've got here. There we go, bring up the link. It is a easy to manage, easy to secure, access. If you're using Dynamics 365, you're already using it. Why is it easy to manage? Because both the data and the metadata, right? That's a fancy word, metadata, data about data, things like the data types, is it a number? Is it a string? The relationships between the data, is this a primary key? Is this a foreign key? Are these two tables related? That kind of thing. That's all stored in the cloud. It's all accessible from the cloud. That makes it easier to manage. Easier to secure because it's centrally located and it's got that role-based security that uses your Office 365 AD groups and AD users, Active Directory. Again, if you're using Dynamics, built in, already using it. Not only can you manage your metadata from the cloud, but you have a rich set of metadata. So sometimes I teach languages like Perl and Python. And you're surprised that some languages, I was teaching Perl the other day, and it was like, it doesn't have a data type for Booleans, doesn't have a true false data type. Not so with Dataverse. Rich, lots of different data types, lots of different kind of relationships, different rules you can create, forms that you can create, and again, all accessible through the cloud. You can do things like, add business logic, add validation for data input, just all sorts of great productivity tools. Specifically, and one that I'm going to show you is Excel. People love Excel, right? I've got so many users that have databases in Excel spreadsheets, and I'm like, let's move them to Dataverse. So you can, we can back them up there and things like that. So the interactivity or the built-in integration with Excel is wonderful from Dataverse. In fact, one of the things you can do with Excel and Dataverse is the CRUD operations. So, create, read, update, and delete. yay, you can do all 4 database manipulation from, a lot of times in Excel, you're pulling data down, you're doing visualizations, but it's really a read-only situation. Not so with Dataverse. There's an add-in that will be automatically loaded when you connect Dataverse to Excel, where you can push data back up, and it will sync. It'll sync your inserts, updates, and deletes, and read any new records. So it's a really cool, and we'll show you that. So here's Dataverse, right? This is what it looks like. There's a couple different ways you can get to it. From the Power Apps portal, there's a link on the left-hand side, left-hand navigation. This is actually an older slide. I keep this in there just to kind of, let people know that there is. So one of the tips and tricks I talk about is sometimes when you're digging into the guts of Dataverse, especially if you're doing any kind of development and programming, I'm still a developer at heart, you'll see references to CDS or Common Data Service, some of the function calls and stuff that Microsoft left them because it'll be difficult to rename everything that deep. So be careful as you're knocking around the user interface. I think Microsoft has done a pretty good job of updating everything to the new names, but not, so when they renamed Dataverse from Common Data Service to Dataverse, they also renamed some of the innards. So things like entities are now called tables, and option sets are now called choices. So, but again, in the functions, sometimes in the code, you might still see these. So that's why I kind of point that out. But this is what Dataverse looks like. You click on Dataverse on the left-hand side, you'll see all sorts of tables. And then you'll see some of the metadata, the name of the table, if it's standard or managed or custom. If you click on one of those tables, you'll see the columns that make up the table. So they used to call these attributes, or no, I think we call them attributes now. Or no, we call them columns now. I'm starting to get confused. We went from attributes to columns. Things like account name, again, with the rich metadata, you've got your whether it's unique or text or an option, whether it's required or optional. I think that I stick a custom one in here somewhere, not in this one, but you can have your own custom columns, your own custom tables added to Dataverse. You can see here is where you can do things up top, where you can export data or edit in Excel. So we'll look at that in a minute when we get into some of the demo. So, okay, great, Dave. It's in the cloud. Yeah, it's easy to use. It's easy to secure. All these great tools. It does cost money. We'll talk a little bit about licensing when we get to the end. That's probably the, so, but I think the return on investment is well worth it. I think these points here, why would you want to use it, definitely go a long way towards providing value based on the cost. So let's get into some of these features that Dataverse can offer you if you're if you've made that sunk cost and you're into it now, you bought a license. Number one, you can analyze data in Power BI very easily. So just by going up to the top here and clicking on data and saying, I want to analyze this in Power BI, what's going to happen is it's going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to download a file, a connection file that's going to connect, that's going to open up Power BI and create a connection to my specific environment in Dataverse. So you'll notice up in here in the right corner, the environment that I'm in is my environment, Dave Patrick's environment. That's a developer environment. Most developer environments have the same name as the developer who created it. And we'll talk more about how you can create your own developer environment if you so choose. Once I click Analyze Data in Power BI, again, it opens up downloads that file, opens up that connection file in Power BI Desktop. So you do have to have Power BI Desktop installed, and you have to be on a Windows machine. I mentioned that because as part of my teaching, I do teach a lot of students that use Macs or Linux boxes. And so unfortunately, Power BI is one of those, Power BI Desktop, I should say, is one of those things that's not, that is Windows only at the moment. So here we are. We've navigated, we've automatically connected to our environment, which is designated by this unique URL here. And I'm presented with some of the tables, aka entities, that are available in that environment. So I just, in this example, checked off the very first, just the account. Let me see all my accounts, and it gives me a little preview. I have more than 2 accounts, but just shows me the first couple of accounts, and I can kind of scroll through the data. Now, if you're familiar with Power BI, you can do a ton more than simply load the data. I'm just going to load the data and do a quick visualization, But if you want, you could click on this button here, and that's like a little wormhole. It opens up this wonderful world of extract, transform, and load, where you can split columns, you can merge columns, you can remove blank rows, you can remove rows with errors, you can do all sorts of, transforming of data, mapping it and shaping it to whatever you need it to look like. And the great thing about that is that when you do those steps, it remembers them. So every time you hit refresh, it goes through all your transformations and brings the data out of, in this case, Dataverse, into your report with those same transformations every time. As an old SQL Server admin and developer, having to write some of this stuff in SQL Server integrated services, and running it and scheduling it, it was always a lot of work to get that happening. And now it's just so easy. The kids these days have no idea how easy Microsoft has made it for them. I've been doing this 30 years, so I remember when I had to walk to school uphill both ways, in the snow with my pants on fire. Anyway, so yeah, you can click an account, you can click load. Another great thing about Power BI is that it recommends visualizations. So it looks at the data and says, hey, it might make sense to have this as a pie chart or a bar graph or whatever. So a lot of my end users that are not as technical in April, exactly. A lot of my users that are not that technical love this because they can literally just, they click, bam, they click another, come over here and select whatever I selected in this particular example. I think I've got the account information, the website URL, just the revenue. So a few clicks and all of a sudden Power BI is like, how about this? And great, now I can see that C&P is my best customer and Coho Winery. We got to go visit them and crank up the sales. But again, this is so my sales are using Dynamics. They've got all their account revenue in Dynamics, and I was able to connect to Dataverse and do a Power BI report in less than 5 minutes, in a few clicks. And then and you can do things like change visualizations and make it more colorful and all that. But it is really, really easy to report on data in Dataverse using Power BI. And I mentioned Microsoft Learn. If you want more, I'm scratching the surface on a lot of these things. There's tons and tons of tutorials, hands-on labs. There's things like Azure sandboxes where you get free credits for Azure for a period of time to perform those hands-on labs, like a 4-hour lab or an 8-hour lab or whatever. Microsoft Learn is way more than documentation. I use it for exam prep. So I mentioned I take a lot of Microsoft exams. I'll go here first rather than looking for a class or anything like that. They have exam crayons on here. You can go and one of the exams I recommend a lot of my developers take is the MS 900, the Microsoft 900. If you're, let's see, I'll bring it up real fast just so you guys can see. So it's Office 365 fundamentals, or Microsoft 365 fundamentals. I won't say that it's an easy exam. Yeah, that's a great link. Thank you. But and I'll throw this link out there if anyone's interested. What did it pop up there? Oh, not Pluralsight. Come on, Pluralsight. What happened there? I don't want Pluralsight. I mean, I love Pluralsight. Don't get me wrong. Pluralsight's great. They're not one of our sponsors today, so, but they are great. Whenever they're a sponsor, I love them. This exam is sort of the entry. It's like the beginner's drug if you want to be hooked on phonics, hooked on certifications. This one's a good one to get started in, and has plenty of material. Has everything you need to prep for this exam is on Microsoft Learn. So you can go here and look at the different, online free, the different learning paths. There's a couple, like I think there's a little hand-on, little self-assessment you can take. So I highly, highly recommend Microsoft Learn for preparing for, especially the fundamental, the sort of the beginner level exams. All right, enough selling that for Microsoft. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about how will we use Dataverse for doing something meaningful, like moving data out of Dataverse and into something else. So again, Microsoft Learn is the place to go. When someone says, Dave, I need to move data from Dataverse, I'll say, well, I think there's an automated flow. I think there's some information on that in Microsoft Learn. And sure enough, here's a little article that talks about it. It says, hey, you can initiate a flow from Dataverse, and there's triggers that you can use. So even if I didn't know anything about Power Automate and Flow, reading through this, it's pretty straightforward with, Okay, so if the record gets selected or, these are those CRUD operations, right? Create, read, update, and delete. If any of these things happen, I can have a trigger based on that. And then when that starts my flow, I can then do something, have an action, maybe put a record in SharePoint. So let's jump into it. Let's do this little demo here. I'll go ahead and switch to my browser. I have it set up. So we're right here at Power Apps. And actually, I'm going to stop and switch back over to Flow, or Power Automate, excuse me. Even though the website's still flow.microsoft.com, it's Power Automate now. So what do we want to do? We want to, here's the scenario, here's the business scenario, and I like using real world scenarios. I got all my users using Dynamics CRM, their customer relationship management. They're adding new accounts every day, but I've got a user who uses SharePoint, doesn't have a license, doesn't need a license for Dynamics CRM for the most part, but they do need to know, maybe they're in marketing and they need to know, maybe they're an intern, right? Who's hired for the summer, and they just need to know when a new account happens because they're going to go tweet about it or something like that. So what I want is a flow that looks at Dataverse, looks at the accounts table in Dataverse, and says, hey, if one of our sales guys enters a new account, grab that record, put it over into SharePoint so our intern can see it and then go tweet about it. That's the business scenario. So let's do that. We're going to go in here and go to my flows, and I'm going to create a new flow. All right, so I'll come in here and say, hey, and you can see I've done this a few times in the past. So I've turned them all off. Let's do a brand new one, do a new flow. Now, the first thing I have to think about is, what environment do I want to be in, right? My default environment, that's the one that everyone uses, but I'm developing. So I want to use my developer environment because I want to get this right before I actually put it into production. So I'm going to switch to my Dave Patrick's environment. Now, before I do that, I'll just give you an idea of the difference. So in my default environment, if I click on data and tables, that's going to take me to Dataverse. And I look at accounts. I don't have a lot of data in, I don't think I have a lot of data in this particular, in my default, because this is my Office developer tenant. I use it for my user group. So I'm going to go and click on account. So I don't really have any account information in here. I want to look at that data. And like I said, a handful of records, just me playing around in here, nothing special. What I do want to do when I develop this is switch to my developer environment. And there in my developer environment, when I click on Dataverse, in fact, this is funny. So notice what happened on the left-hand side. Even the logo changed. Okay, that's the beauty of cloud-based softwares. Things will just change on you as you click through them. Still Dataverse. Okay, click on tables. And now I'm going to go find my account table. I've got the same schema, the same default schema in both of these environments. The big difference is in my developer environment, I loaded it with sample data so that I have something to play with, something to work with. So there's much more data in my developer environment. I've been told that if you blow on your people will think it's coffee. So very good. All right. So while this is loading, and notice, as I mentioned, every now and then you'll find a reference to the old name. So it says it's loading the entities, though now we call them tables. So let that, think about it. See, it says over here, tables, where it used to say it. I like to pick on Microsoft about that. There we go. It's coming up. So there's my tables. And let's click on account. And when I go to data here, you'll see that this is a different environment. It's loaded with lots of sample data, something that I can actually play with. So this is where I want to start and create my flow in my developer environment. Yeah, there's a bunch of different data. Okay, so we're going to go back to my flows. Click down here on flows. And I'm going to create a new flow. Now, be careful. There is a little bit of a difference between when you're in Power Apps and you do a flow versus when you're in Power Automate and you do a flow. And it's tricksy because notice it looks very much the same. And I'll give you sort of a side-by-side little A/B testing, right? There's Power Apps. There's the data changed. Oh, hang on. Let me switch to my, that's the point I was making earlier. Let me make sure I'm in my developer environment. Okay, all right. So Power Automate data, Power Apps Dataverse, Power Apps flows, new flow, Power Automate flow, my flows. So a little tricksy, but they both have the new flow, right? This one has new flow and then different choices. I can start from a template. I can start from a Visio template. I can do an automated cloud flow, an instant cloud flow. I can schedule one based on date, desktop, business process. For this demo, I'm just going to do a automated cloud flow, one that fires based on a trigger. Remember, I said if a new item gets added to an account in Dataverse, we're going to automate this flow. Before I do that, I will show you some of the templates. So there's a lot of different flows that you could create. It's like when you're in Word and you say, hey, new document, it says, do you want to do a fax or do you want to do an invoice or, whatever, similar to that. There's a lot of template based flows that when you start them, they give you a lot to fill in the blanks, like Madlibs. If anyone remember Madlibs, you can just, hey, fill this in, fill this in, fill this in. So yeah, you'll see these are some of the flows, and they're not all just there's a lot of different connectors, a lot of different post message to Teams. I think there's some that connect up to like Twitter. It really is a ton of different potential templates and connections and whatnot, but we don't want to do any of that. We're going to start with the blank one. That said, if we do it from here, let's see so a little bit different, right? You get the template, you get all those, but notice we didn't get the Visio here. Okay, so there's difference, so watch out. That's why I want to make sure I do it. I want to do it from Power Automate. I'm in my correct environment. I'm going to do a new flow, and I'm going to do a new automated cloud flow. So give it a name. We'll call this intern. We'll call it the account update for my intern. Account update for the intern. There we go. Now it says, hey, Dave, you're doing this from scratch, so you got to tell me which trigger you want. So I want Dataverse, so we'll just type Dataverse or even just data. You'll see that there's some choices to be made. There is the current one. There is one that's coming soon, preview. I could check it out. Maybe it works, maybe it's buggy. There are the old ones that used to work fine when I've actually got a bunch of flows built on these old ones, but now they've been deprecated in their legacy, so you're not supposed to choose these anymore. So fine, we'll pick the current one. It's interesting. So I guess the old ones had row added, deleted, and modified as 3 separate triggers. And now with the new one, we can do one trigger and just choose between any of the actions that we want to trigger off of. So we'll go ahead and trigger, we'll choose this guy and say create. And then like the Madlib, I'm filling in the blanks. So we'll come in here and we'll say, when do we want this to trigger? So again, I could do when it's added or deleted, any of the combinations. Keep it simple for this demo. I'll just do added. When an account gets added, that's when I want this to fire. Which table? So these are all the tables from my developer environment, and this should, just to verify I'm in my developer environment, I think I have a table called cat in here. Let's see. Yeah, there's dogs. So I added one for dogs, and I think I added one for cats. When I do the demos for my students, they like that. Yeah, there's one for cats. So I feel good that I'm in the right environment. I mean, it says it up here, but anyway. So we're going to do accounts. So we'll go here to accounts, and then the scope. So do I want this for a single user? Do I want this for a certain business unit, or maybe the whole dang company? Yeah, the whole company. We'll go with organization. All right. Some advanced options. This is just, I could pull back just certain columns, filter the row. There's all sorts of. I'm not going to do any of that right now, but there is some options to get in there and tweak it a little bit performance-wise. So the next step, we've got our trigger. We've got everything filled out like we think we need it. Is to, and for this scenario, I want to add something to SharePoint. There's a SharePoint list. I want to add a new account. In fact, let me pull up my SharePoint list before I do this. So I'm in my Mad SharePoint tenant. So we'll just go right to the Mad SharePoint site, and we'll see if there's an account list. If there's not one, I could go ahead and create one. Right, it's not too difficult to go create a new list, but I'm pretty sure I've got a list there already. All right, so if I needed to do a new one, I could just do new list. But I think I've got an account notifications in here. Accounts updated. That sounds good. Nothing in there yet. So let's go add it. We'll use this list. It's got title. It's got the account name. Maybe I will add a column for the single line of text. This is just going to be the account phone number. Right? Maybe my intern's going to call them up and say, hey, you're welcome. You're a new account. I'm going to tweet about it. Is that okay to get the permission first? So we'll go ahead and just add a quick column. So now we've got title, account name, account phone number. Perfect. So we're going to throw any new, whenever someone, our sales guys adds one, going to put it in here for our intern. I mean, I might grab this. Well, yeah, sure, I'll grab it right now. Copy in a second. So back to our flow. We said we need to do a SharePoint action. We got our trigger. We're doing an action. SharePoint, yes. So I'm just filtering because there's so many. I don't know if you saw, but there was a lot of triggers in there, or excuse me, actions. I just want the SharePoint ones, and specifically I'm looking for create. I could scroll down and find it, but I know it's in there. There we go. We're going to create an item. That's what we want to do. Not a file, but an item. So what site do I want? I've got lots of sites in this particular tenant. So if I open this up, it should give me some of the sites that I could target. In this particular one, I'm going to go right for the root. So we'll just do the root site. If I had created a new site, I didn't, but if I had, it may not show up in that list. So one of two options. One, you can just, there is an option to put it, just manually put it in there, right? A custom value. And as long as it does exist, it'll work. But, or I could just, leave this and come back, and then it would refresh it after I created the site. So we use that site, and then what list? Again, it's going to go through all the lists and choose the lists that are eligible for connecting. So it's not showing me the hidden lists, right? If you're familiar with SharePoint, SharePoint's got several hidden lists, and obviously they're not going to be displayed here. Or again, if you just created a new list and this hasn't refreshed, you could enter a custom value for that list name. So again, we'll go with the accounts updated. And just like before, there's, some advanced options. Actually, where's the advanced options? Where you can limit the columns by a certain view. So again, for performance reasons, I might want to do that. I'm not going to do that now, but you could. There are 3 columns available to map data from Dataverse into SharePoint to. So the first one is the title, and you'll notice by the little asterisk that it is required. I do have to fill this one in. We'll just put a little note here, new account. We're hard coding this value, new account from Dataverse. That'll just so we know that someone didn't do it by hand. This was a part of our flow. The next thing is the account name. Now this, I actually want to know what account got added. So I'm going to come over here to my dynamic content, and this shows me all the columns or all the attributes that are available from Dataverse. And so there's a whole bunch of them from that particular, these are just for the table that I chose. So I want the account name. Luckily it's right there. So I just click on it and pops right up into there. So we've done our first mapping. I used to do a lot of work with electronic data interchange, where we would map one electronic document to a format to another electronic format. We used to do a bunch of different tools. One tool was called Mercator Mapper, and it was very much like this. So it was way ahead of its time. This was years ago. I feel like I'm back doing that. I'm mapping data from one data to another. It's very, used to charge a lot of money for this. The next thing is the account phone. So again, the tricky thing now is to figure out which phone number, because there's several phone numbers in here, which one is going to be the one that people are going to be entering most of the time. There's a phone with address 1, phone with address 2, there's a phone associated with the address. So this is a little trial and error. The first time I did it, I think I chose address phone, and then I realized that was not the main phone, wasn't on the first on the form. Luckily enough, main phone is the one I really need. So now I figured that out. So we'll put main phone in there. And we don't need it twice. I clicked it twice. We don't need it twice. We only want it one time. And there is capability to do all sorts of expressions. So very Excel-like, where if you want to concatenate stuff or even do some conditional, you can do all sorts of manipulation and get fancy with your expressions. Again, keeping it simple for this demo, but the capability is there. All right. So with that, that's all we need, right? We've got our trigger. When something gets added to the accounts for anyone in the organization, we're going to go out to SharePoint, go out to this list, create a new record, fill it in, done. Save that. If I didn't make any mistakes, if I typed in everything okay, should save here. It says it's ready to go, recommends me test. We don't test right to production. No, of course we'll test it. So let me close that. Testing is interesting. So with testing, you can this particular flow can be manually tested, meaning I got to go out there and add a new record, or it can be automatically tested, but you can only automatically test the flow if you've already manually tested it, at least in this particular type of flow. So manual's there, but all that means is I got to go out there and go to Dataverse, put on my salesperson hat, and enter a new account. So that's what we'll do. So it's waiting for me to test this. So we'll go out to Dataverse, switch my hat. I wish I should have brought my hats. I could have actually switched hats here. Someone earlier today was playing with their hats. I think it was in the keynote in the beginning. I thought, oh, that's a good idea. I should have different hats. So I'll go to Dataverse tables, and I'm just going to go to the account table. I'm the salesperson now. I'm going to enter a new record, and I probably would be using the Dynamics, app, but for now I'm just going to go in straight into the tables. So go into data, and I've got a bunch of accounts. It looks like I've got Burger King's in here, Chick-fil-A's in here, Bocce Burger, which used to be a great burger place in Vegas. I probably have In-N-Out Burger in here, Jack in the Box. Out in the chat, any good burger joints? Because I need to add some new accounts, and I'm almost out of ideas for good burger joints. There, Five Guys, I got all the good burger joints in here. So we'll just add a phony record since I can't think of any more good burger records. Now this does happen from time to time. And I think I said in the beginning, integrated means that single sign-on for the most part. Every now and then this happens to me. It drives me nuts, to be honest, but that's okay. I guess it got tired. It's like, hey, I forgot you. It's like, why did you forget me? I've been here this whole time, but that's okay. So we'll go and yes, Fuddruckers. That's awesome. I forgot about Fuddruckers. Now you got me thinking. Fuddruckers, Red Robin. So we got a couple of good ideas. I was going to add Burgers R Us, but yeah, Fuddruckers. Okay, Fuddruckers I like because it had that. I don't know if they still do, but they used to have that fixins bar where you could go up and just put all fixins. Roy Rogers and on the East Coast used to be like that, where I could put a whole salad on top of my burger. So all right, so we'll do Fuddruckers. I'm going to just copy that right from that chat. Chris, appreciate that feedback. Yeah, I know. It's hollering at me because I just tabbed off of there. And we'll put down the phone number for Fuddruckers. And we'll go ahead and save and close that. So now that we've got this new account, we should be able to go. Did I already add it? That's interesting. Oh, the phone number. I was going to say, I know I didn't add Fuddruckers, but the phone. I did add the phone number. So I'm going to ignore that, even though I do appreciate that. It's saying, hey, they had the same phone number. That's probably a problem. Yeah, okay. Maybe it's the same building. Who knows? So I'm going to ignore and stick with that. So we will add that record. Come on. I keep forgetting about me. That should be saved to Dataverse. Oh, I forgot to check my environment. So I have to make sure, it's in the right environment because I had all my other data. So it's in my developer environment. Sometimes I forget that, but all right. Wow, that was not expected. It logged me out and took me to a completely different page. So I won't take it personally. I'll just close that window. Here we are back at my active accounts, and let's see if Fuddruckers is in here now. Not yet. So we'll just do a refresh, and then we'll see if Fuddruckers successfully got saved. And it did. Yay, that's exciting. Jump over to SharePoint and look at that. There's there it is twice. That's interesting. Oh, you know why? I have two triggers. I forgot to turn off my other trigger. So, but you can tell which one's from the trigger that we just created is, luckily we put the title in. So we know somewhere else I had done another trigger. I have to go find that other trigger, make sure I turn it off. Otherwise we'll get two records every time I do this. But it worked. Now, how do you know it worked? Obviously, you can see it from what got brought over. But you can also go back to your flow and look at the results. So we'll come back here and we'll say, hey, it took 0 seconds. I don't believe it took 0 seconds. It took 0 seconds to get the input. You can see some of the data that was sent over. It uses JSON, JavaScript object notation, this little key value pair. If you're not familiar with JSON, it's a really nice, tight way of storing data and schema together. And you can look through that and see, what got sent over. This is good because the first time I did my phone number, I went and looked through there for the phone number and it was blank. And I was like, why is it blank? And I realized I was looking at the wrong phone number. So you can look through the input, and then additionally, you can look through the output or what got passed over to SharePoint, so I can see what site it used, the information that got sent over, things like when the time and date stamp, the SharePoint user name, all that good stuff. So a lot of good material in here for even when it works. So I could go back. This is my, yep, I got it. This is my my flow. Notice the diamond. So Dataverse is a premium connector, so it does require a premium license, either pro license, or when we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, so that's why you see the diamond there. But this is my little overview. It tells me, the name of the flow, who created the flow, status, the runs down here. So it's had one run. I can click on that run. That's what we were just looking at, the results of that run. Go back to the full screen. I can do things like look at the owners. So over here is owners, so here's one of my pet peeves about this particular screen. You've got 3 edits. You got edit, edit, edit. Oh, actually more than that, right? There's one over here too. Oh my gosh. So someone says, Dave, I need to, this flow, you own it, but what if you win the lottery and leave the company? I used to say get hit by a bus, but there's buses nowadays, and forget that. So win the lottery and leave the company. This is where you would add another owner, a co-owner. That way, if I left the company, the co-owner would take it over. Now it is disabled. I can't add a co-owner in the developer environment because the developer environment is only for an individual. So I can't do it here. But if I was in my switch over here to my regular, my production environment, my default environment, if I edit one of these guys, those I should be able to edit and add co-owners too, right? So here's where I could come in and say, just in case something happens to me, we'll make Sarah here a co-owner, and that way she gets access. And if I get deactivated from Active Directory, she can be elevated to owner, and everything will still work. So let's see, back to the other environment. There's our flow. We saw our data. Let's go back to Dataverse for a second. I've got a little cheat sheet over here. Make sure I touch everything I wanted to demo. So let me go over to my demo cheat sheet, see what we got. So we've created, in fact, I got it on the slides too. I don't really need the demo cheat sheet. We've done so far. So we created a flow. We saw the table/entities in Dataverse, or common data services. We added a new record. We ran the flow. We saw the results in SharePoint. We saw the flow results. Let's export. So this is a question I get all the time: is how do you, now you put it in development environment, how do you get into production? Well, you can export the flow and import the flow. So let's do that. So come back over here to my flows, and then this is one of those gotchas again. Right here I'm in flow, and here I'm in Power Apps. Let me switch back to flows here in Power Apps. This is one of those gotchas that'll drive you nuts, because you might be in Power Apps in your flows and you say, great, I just created this account for intern. Let's go export that. There's my export. Wait, what? Get flow identifier. Well, that's great if I need the identifier, but what if I need to export? It's like, wait, export? What's going on here? What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. You're in Power Apps. So let's change direction, flip over to Power Automate. Same flow, same, bat channel, same bat time for the old folks. Export. Now I can package it up and actually email it to someone, package it up as a zip file. That's what we want, and it's available in Power Automate, but not Power Apps. So export, package. So now we're going to go and give it a name. We'll call this our intern flow. This is just, it's going to be, it's in production, whatever. Give it some description. Come down here. This is, what's inside. So we've got the flow. When someone imports this, are we going to create a new one or update an existing one? So depending on what you wanted to do, either one. That doesn't mean if you mark it for update and someone imports it new, they'll just make them change it to kind of confirm that it's going to do a new one. So it doesn't really matter. So we'll save that. Down here's the connections it's going to use. There's really no other choices, so I'm not sure why they let me. They pretend to give me an option, but it's going to use my connections. But when someone else imports it, they'll choose their own connection. So it's not like it's going to use my connection. I'm going to make them choose their own connection when someone else imports it. So we'll go ahead and export that. And it creates a little file. There's the file. We can even open this up if anyone's interested. Again, I mentioned before, I love taking things apart. So there's the zip file. We can open up, let's see, there's a JSON, a manifest JSON. We can open that in code if we want. or whatever favorite text editor that you like to use. I like to use VS Code, so we can do a, what is it, Alt-Shift-F. That's formatted a little bit, a little hotkey action in VS Code, and then you can see, what got exported. So it's information about what the flow was, all those universal identifiers. Nothing earth-shattering here, but it is nice. I like to kind of pick. I work for the Army. We're very security conscious. I like to see what information's going out my door, what information's coming in my door. So, hey, it's using this URL. Is that URL blocked? It might be. We run into that a lot in my environment where things are using URLs and they don't tell us, and all of a sudden it's not working. It's because that URL might be blocked. So it's good to know that kind of stuff. All right. And then if you go deeper into this is more of the package. There's some other JSON files. There's a one for APIs map, connections map, definition. You guys can play with all of them. I think the definition is probably the most interesting one. If I open that one up, that's the actual definition of the JSON. So shift off F, or not the JSON, but the flow. So there you go. So now you get, what it did, the triggers, the actions, all that good stuff. So, all right, let's close that. Close that. I could go down a rabbit hole with that. Close that. So the file's out there. Now let's go import it. So I'm going to switch environments. I'm going to switch to my Mad SharePoint default environment to production. Now I'm going to see if I can import it. So we'll go import the flow. And it's going to say, what file do you want to import? So we'll go upload. And I put it in downloads. And there it is right there. So we'll go ahead and say open. And it's going to ask me for, do you want to create a new one? If I've never created, if it doesn't find it, because I said update, it's going to ask me to define connections for the 2 connections that it needs. So once it brings it up, uploads it, and provisions it, then I'll select a few things that it needs to, and then it'll bring it in and be ready to go in production. Some gotchas. This flow has hard-coded in it the site, website. So in this case, it should be fine because I use my developer tenant and now I'm bringing it into production, but they're all in the same Office 365 tenant. So they all use the same, they'll have access to the same sites. If you're switching from one tenant to another where the site names might be different, then you've got to deal with that, right? That might be a situation where you basically, I'll show you what you could do if you had to do that. You could just go in and edit the flow. So let's update this. We'll come in here and update this. We're going to say, yes, we know this was set for update, but we're going to create as new. And then this is the name we'll use. We'll call this, we'll just add the word production on it just for grins, even though it's not there already because the other one was in a different environment. Save that. Save, I did click save, okay. The Dataverse connection. So I've got one already. If I didn't have one, I could create new and then create a new connection, right? I've got some existing connections. So, but if I didn't for whatever reason, there's all sorts of connections out there. So you can see these are some of the connections that I've used in the past. You can do a new connection. There's all sorts of data connectors that you can connect to. So if you don't have one already, you can, like I said, if I was connecting to Twitter or something, you could go and create a Twitter connection, but we already have ours, so we don't need to do that. We'll save that, and then same thing for this one. Save that one. So we filled everything out. We'll go ahead and do an import. Now it's bringing my flow that's connected to Dataverse back into production, and it'll make it available for use. And again, if this was a different tenant, that the site names were different, what I would now do after I import is go in and edit the flow and update the site name. So it's not that big of a deal, but it is something you have to think about. It wouldn't work right out of the box. All right, so we've had success. We can open it, look it over, do the edits, check the names and everything. Everything looks good, but if it needed to change, this is where I could change it. Other things to think about, little gotchas. I mentioned that there's all these edits before. So this edit is for actually editing the flow. You have to define them. It's a good question, Brian. So when you import, you do, as you saw, as I imported, I had to select those connections. They have to exist. If I get a second, I'll do another demo where the connections don't exist, and you'll see what that looks like. So I'll put a pin in that question. That's a good question. So this edit edits the flow. This edit edits information about the flow. And the reason I bring this up is, it looks like the owner can't be changed, and it can't be changed, like at least not through here, but you can edit the owners and add co-owners, again, if you're not in your development environment. Right? And then we saw that earlier where I came in and I added co-owners. You can even make a list as the owner, and that comes in handy when you want to put a flow onto a list and you want everyone to be able to use it. You make the list the owner, and then it's available to everyone to run. All right, let's get out of that. What else did I want to say about this? This is newish, submitting as a template. Oh, I haven't run it, so I can't submit it. That's interesting. I guess I've never clicked it right after a fresh import. But if you had run it, you can like submit it to Microsoft as a template to be reused by the community, something like that. So that's kind of a neat thing. Okay. Flow checker. Did I talk about the flow checker? The flow checker again is checking the edit. I was starting to talk about the edits. I talked about this edit, and this edit. Yeah. The flow checker. If your flow has a problem, the flow checker does come in handy sometimes. Let me go ahead and edit, and I'm going to create a problem just to show you flow checker. So let's get rid of the. Let's get this wrong. Let's do a typo on the list name. So I just typoed the list name, and flow checker comes right up, right? It says, hey, the list name's required. It was smart enough to go out there and do a REST call on the list to see if it exists. It got a 404. That list doesn't exist, and that's why it's hollering about that. So flow checker's handy because a lot of times I'll be, your head's down doing stuff, and then if you see this little icon up here, oh, it's like the stethoscope. Something's wrong. We got to go check what did we do wrong there. Another thing little gotcha is coming up here. You can rename it. There's a couple different ways you can rename your flows. So if you rename them up here, but if you forget to hit save, it won't do that. Oh, ignore whatever. So now it didn't save my change. That's something I've done a few times. Just drives me nuts sometimes. But all right. What else did we want to show you? We showed you the exporting it and importing, creating your own entity or table in Dataverse. So let's jump back up to Dataverse, switch gears on you a little bit. Let's go to our data, go to our tables. So you saw that I had cats and dogs. Those are all custom entities or custom tables. It's really easy to create a new table. And as my SQL Server administrator, normally I'm typing a bunch of SQL, create table, name of the table, primary key, list all the columns, things like that. I mean, there is a GUI that you use so you can kind of, this one is, bam, give it a name. So let's create a table for burgers. Maybe there's different types of burgers we want to keep track of. It must be hungry. It must be getting near dinner time. I'm on the East Coast, so it is. Name. So this is where, again, it does a lot of this for you. It does make it easier, gives you a primary key name. It actually, in fact, if I leave the S off, it does this whole, it'll give you the plural display, right? There's that convention in the database world. We should name all our tables singularities. And then, in this case, there's a plural display name. You can enable attachments so people can, upload blobs, binary large objects. There's all sorts of other settings you can do. Give it a description, all sorts of other stuff. Let's go ahead and just create this guy. I think it hollered because I have attachments on. Costs, it's like uses up a little more space. But then now that you have your custom table, these are relationships you can define, keys, all sorts of stuff. What's interesting is, let's go back to our, well, no, I guess we can stick with this one. So if I want to start adding data to this, right, we can come in here and there's a couple different ways to get data, right? You can ingest data from Excel. There's other data connections, all sorts of different data sources. But what I want to do, I'm going to keep it simple. We're going to go and go back to our table here. There's our burger. It's still being provisioned, so we'll give it a second. Notice it says custom, so it's one that we added, and even the name is different. So I've got a few of those like that. If I show just my custom ones, or let's see, well, give it a second. It's still working. I want to go and add data, but it's still being provisioned. So we'll pick on accounts then. Because now I want to show you is if you wanted to populate this table with data, probably the easiest way, most people I know are going in and they're using this edit in Excel. And that's just a really, what it does for you when you do that is it's going to bring down an Excel file that has a connection built into it to connect to this Dataverse environment, much like I did with the Power BI connection. So I'll go ahead and open that file up. I'm going to enable editing. And what it's going to do is it's going to load this add-in, this Office add-in, the Microsoft Power Apps Office add-in that enables me to pull data down and enables me to push changes back to Dataverse. So I get that full create, read, update, delete functionality. So here we go. We've got all the, so I'm not in the wrong environment, but I'm in my default, my production environment, my default environment. So just, keep that, top of mind. That's why I don't see the burger joints. But for demo purposes, this is fine. So if I wanted to change one of these records, maybe this is Red Robin, right? And this is Burger King. I've got a couple of updates I could delete. Maybe this one needs to be deleted. That's just a test, and that one needs to be deleted. And then if we want to add a new one, we can add a new one. Let's refresh real quick. So look, so it says, look, there's changes. Do you want to no, I don't want to overwrite it. No, that's not what I want to do. I want to save it. So we'll save. And then I want to publish. So now it's smart enough. It's saying, hey, you haven't added any rows, but you did update 2 rows and you deleted 2 rows. You want to send those changes back to Dataverse? Yes, I do. So it should send those back. Ooh, give it a second to publish. You see down here, it's doing the syncing. It says publishing, but it's really syncing. And then once that comes back, I should have, if I go back to Dataverse for a second and look at my accounts, it looks like Burger finally finished provisioning. We'll go to data. Oh, now you see the update. So if I add a record here, we'll do it both ends, right? I can add a record in Dataverse, I can add a record in Excel, and they should sync both ways. So that's kind of a fun experience. So we'll go and add Fuddruckers. And then down here in Excel, we'll add a new record. We'll call this Five Guys. And now let's publish. And let's see what happens. It says updated. So let me refresh. I didn't get Fuddruckers. Oh, there's Fuddruckers. Okay, so I did have to do the refresh to pull that down. But now if I come over here, I should get Five Guys and Fuddruckers. Okay, so really a really powerful tool to be able to work with Dataverse from an Excel spreadsheet. Now, it automatically did that single sign-on. If I had, if I hadn't already signed into Dataverse and this was the first file opened, it might prompt me to sign in through the Power Apps add-in. No big deal. You sign in, boom. Again, if you're need to sign out, or if you need to change your environment, there's ways to do that. So, but other than that, it's a pretty straightforward and powerful tool. And again, you can, once you have this, people who are familiar with Excel, it's really easy to do things like inserting, recommended charts and whatever. Well, maybe this one's not very exciting, so I'd have to, I think, do a pivot table first, right? Just do a pivot table and then, but you get the idea. You do all sorts of cool stuff once it's in Excel. All right. So we created a custom entity. We imported data into Excel, made some changes, published it back to CDS. Or I keep saying CDS because that's what I've been doing this talk a while back when it was still called CDS. A little bit about environments. So there's lots of different environments that you can create. There's trial environments. There's developer environments. There's production environments. Obviously, the nice thing about a trial environment, you get it for 30 days at no cost. If you don't like it, let it go. It goes thrown away, or you can convert it to a production environment. So that's the difference between a trial environment and, say, a development environment. Development environment, you can't upgrade it or can't convert it. How do you get a development environment? The Power Apps community plan. So, and I've got the links built into my slides. So if you're interested, you just click on one of my slides and it brings up the link to this particular page. So the developer plan or the community plan You sign up. If you're already part of an Office 365 tenant, it'll just add it to it. This even worked in my D&D environment, which is very locked down, but I was able to go in and create my own development environment. If you walk through, you type it, you put in a few things, and then off you go. If you're using your own Office 365 developer tenant, you can use that just to create one in your developer tenant. So it's a really cool, free. When I say cool, I mean free. Offering from Microsoft to build business apps, build workflows, get started with that, and for exam preparation. So did I mention I'm a certification junkie? Yeah. So here's some of the things that you get included with the packet, with Power Apps, Flow, Dataverse, all sorts of good stuff. And I mentioned, creating the different environments. If you go to the admin.power platform, that's where you can see all your environments, and you can see the different types of environments you can create: trial, production, sandbox, which is it's kind of like a combination of developer and trial, where you can just do it like a sandbox, like a QA almost. All of these, again, just click on the link here. I got all the links built into my slides. You can jump in here, and this works if you have permissions, right? So in my DoD environment, I don't have permissions to do this. I go here. I can go to the link, but it doesn't really show me much. This particular environment, this is my Office 365 developer tenant, so I am the admin. This is where I can actually come in and do new types of environments, put them in different places, whether, create databases for the environments. That creates the Dataverse database if I say yes to that. What else? Once you have the environments, one thing you'll notice, this is relatively new, is now you'll see Dataverse for Teams, which is different than regular Dataverse. Dataverse for Teams uses the built-in licensing to Office 365 and works. It's not as fully functioned, but a team that creates a Dataverse as part of the team gets to use it just without any additional licensing. So each of my Microsoft Teams where I provisioned an app now also has a Teams Dataverse provision for that app to store data in. So if I'm keeping track of lunch ideas or something like that, that's where the data is being stored in Dataverse for Teams, and that environment shows up now here in my other environments. What else can I tell you about environments? You can see other people's. If you're the admin, these are some of my students that created some environments. You'll notice over here, they were created a couple of years or a year or so ago. I've got my own environments. I've got the default environment. You can, if you click on one of these environments, you can back them up. You can restore them, just like a database. So this one earlier, I backed up and restored. All right, what else? See, it was restored earlier today. You can see ones that you've done, so it's really cool for that kind of recoverability. If you want to mess around, then throw it away and come back. So there's a little, I call this an ad. Do more with your team. Upgrade. It's trying to get me to upgrade to Dataverse, which will, if you click this button, Microsoft gives you this nice sale pitch of you get more capacity. True. More types of data. Okay. More data integration options. Fine. More capabilities. I'm not sure what that is, but okay. More security. Okay. Sure. It all sounds great, but what they're not, got the little diamond. That should be the warning that it's going to cost more, right? So if you upgrade, you're going to need licenses. Data is going to count against your org's available capacity. So warning, danger, Will Robinson. If you're going to upgrade your Dataverse for Teams to regular Dataverse, understand that not only is it permanent, but you're gonna no longer be on the freebie, and it's not even freebie because Dataverse for Teams uses Office 365 licenses, which you pay for, so it's included. But you'll be on the extra or the premium content. That's what that diamond means. So be warned if you go down that path. Tread lightly. All right. What else? Tips and tricks. I think I hit most of these tips and tricks. Things like watch out for references to the old terminology, entities and columns and CDS, and they all got new names now, but not everywhere. Make use of the flow checker. That helps you if you got any errors with your flows. Oh, Teams rows versus my flows is something I run into sometimes, and I wanted to point that out, and I forgot to. When you're looking at flows, let's go to my flows for a second, and you share one of these flows with someone. So if I share this, so this is different. So let's see if I share this. Is what can happen is, and I should be able to do this. Sarah, yep, I'm going to share. Is that it just moves where it gets listed. So I've done this in the past where I'm working on this one with 2 other people, and then when I click and I go, hey, where'd it go? It moves under shared with me. So just be, don't freak out. Hey, I shared it, now I can't find it. It's just under a different tab. So I had to freak out with that once or twice or maybe 5 times. Sharing, I think I just showed you how to share the flows. There's a whole article on that, so I put that up there. It talks about sharing with people, sharing with lists, and so that's some good information there if you're interested. And it is tough. I think I pointed this out earlier, but I'll point it out again. When you're looking at your flows, and jump over to one of the flows I was looking at, and you're trying to edit it, you might click. There's all those different edits, and especially if you click this edit, he says, hey, you can't change the owner. And I know Dave showed me how to share it. It's this edit over under owners when you want to go change the owner. So watch out for that. It's another one of those gotchas. I think Microsoft might be able to do a better job of that. And then this, I showed you guys this earlier, my flows versus my flows, which is really just Power Automate flows versus Power Apps flows. There is differences between those two. So if you're looking for something, and it really should say not my flows versus my flows, but Power Automate flows versus Flow Power Apps flows. All right. And these are just some of the other gotchas. I got some screenshots. Again, if you're looking for the old common data, it's not there anymore. You got to type in Dataverse. If you go and you create a new environment, you have to, when you first create the environment, you have to create a solution, or excuse me, a database if you want to create a solution. So it'll walk you through creating your new environment, pick your plan, 30-day trial, or Power Apps Community Plan. Either one, walk through step. You'll have to create a database. If you didn't check the box to create the database as part of your environment, when you do that, you choose, a currency, a language, all that other stuff. You create your database. In this example, I'm adding sample data. It takes a little bit. It's not instantaneous. In fact, it takes more than a couple of minutes. And if you're like me, you're impatient, you might get this. You're like, I just created it. I walked away. I came back. I got something to drink. It still says something wrong. This is the solution I tell most of my students. When you're stuck on a problem and something's going wrong, walk around the block. Walk away from it. Take 5-10 minutes. Come back. That's what I did with this one. It just took a second. Hit refresh, and then everything was provisioned as expected. So be patient with Power Apps and Dataverse. It's old. Lastly, your Office 365 developer program. This is a free resource from Microsoft that I can't say enough about. Join it. Doesn't cost you anything. When you click and join this, and this is what I've been using for my Mad SharePoint site, it will create a Office 365 tenant. And by tenant, I mean, you can create multiple SharePoint sites, multiple environments for Dataverse, multiple flows. You're king of the Office 365. You're made the administrator. You're given 25 user licenses, so you can work with the team. You can load sample data, which is amazing. So sample users, sample events, sample emails, sample SharePoint content. I'll create one of these tenants just to give to someone. I'll say, hey, look, this is what a SharePoint site could look like. And, it just takes me a few minutes to run through this wizard, and then I'll send it to a customer and say, play with it. Or I'll use it during an interview if I want a candidate to try something out in SharePoint. I'll create one of these tenants and say, try something out. And having the sample data helps me, so it's not just a blank slate. When you guys create it nowadays, it's a 90-day subscription. This is an older one back when they used to do 120 days. But every 90 days, as long as you're using it, Microsoft will automatically up the subscription, renew it. I get an email for this one every 120 days. Congratulations, your developer tenant has been renewed because you've been using it. And the using it can be as little as checking email once in a while. So it doesn't have to be a lot. If you don't use it, it will go away. They will send you an email. You haven't, because I've created so many that I've forgotten about a few, and they will deprovision it, but that's okay. So, you pick one main one that you're using, use it all the time. I did have to provide a credit card when I signed up, but they've never charged it. I've had this one for like a while now. Does it say when it first came out? I think it's been like 6 or 7 years that I've had this one. So it's again, really great resource. See a quick question. When you unshare a flow, it still remains in the shared me. Yeah, I've seen that, Jeff. That there's some weirdness that goes on with the user interface. In fact, if I have a minute, I'll show you some of the weirdness I was coming into with earlier, where I shared one of my flows I shared with. Let me see if I can find it. I want to go to not that environment. Here's another weird thing about Power Apps versus Power Automate. So notice I only see 2 environments here, but if I go over to Flow, I see all my environments. So, okay, thanks, Power Apps. Let's go to my HR News environment. So what I want to show you, and this is one of my Teams environments, Teams for Dataverse, is that all my users, did I delete my flow? I had a flow in here. Oh, it's because I did a restoring. So I created a flow and then I backed it up, created the flow, and then did a restore, and now my flow's gone. Or is it under shared with me? No, it's under shared with me. Okay. This is exactly what you're talking about, Jeff. So, oh no, but I haven't unshared this one yet. So we can we'll try out Jeff's theory here. So, but what I wanted to show you about sharing this one is when I edit it, it says that one of my users, Satna, is one of the owners. However, she's not a member of the team. So every time I do something here, let's actually remove Diana. It's going to complain about Satna because it added her, even though it shouldn't have, because she's not a member of the team and doesn't have access to anything in this team. So now it's making a liar out of me. It's still there. It used to complain about it. I swear 2 seconds ago it was complaining about it. Let's see if we can get it to complain. Let me add Diana back. Let's see if it'll complain about Satna. I don't know how Satna. I don't know why I throw an error message. There we go. So you can see right here, it's saying she can't be created because it's not a member of the thing. Yeah, I know. So why did you add her there? And now I feel like every time I add someone, and I'm doing this earlier, it keeps complaining about her. But let's try what Jeff asked. So if I unshare with Satna and unshare with Sarah, go back and go to my flows. Cloud flows. I'm gonna do a Control F5 to clear my buffer, clear my cache. Oh yeah, once you've shared it, and let me just check one more thing. Make sure I didn't share this with the list. Oh, Diana's still in there. See, this is some of it. It's a little wanky. Make sure. Oh, it's shared with a list too. Let me get rid of all the sharing. So not shared with a list, not shared with anyone else. And oh, there we go here, and refresh. Yep, confirm, Jeff. It's stuck there. And let me just one more time go in here and see if make sure it didn't stick with any of those. So it's just me, no list. It is just me, but it's stuck with shared with me. Okay. That's the joys of working with technology. I won't even blame Microsoft. I know I do a lot with Amazon Web Services too, and they've got their own sets of persnickety challenges. So, all righty. That, I think, is everything, except I'll leave you with this. There's a lot of licensing issues. I don't like to talk about them. I see no evil, speak no evil. I would recommend, if you have a serious licensing question, to contact someone at Microsoft that is a licensing specialist. But if you're interested, I do have a link on some of the licensing that's around Power Apps and the different plans and what you can do and more. I think this one, this is a recent ad frequently asked questions. So people ask things like, how do they work? Which one should I choose? When do I need a premium license? One down here I thought was useful is, so, if an owner of the flow, so when you create a flow, you're the owner, right? We were adding co-owners. How do you make it work? And I think I demoed this where you change the owner, right? You can, there's a couple different ways you can change the owner. You can add a co-owner like I was doing. There's also in the Power App portal a way to go in there and edit the owners. I think that's what they're showing you here. No, I think they're alluding to. Are they alluding to? That's the way I showed you. So in this one, they're actually changing the owner, not just adding the co-owner, but they're actually changing the owner. So that's some good information. And there is, if you go back to the Power App portal, you can see where you can do things like, let's see, there it is. Go back to one. So if you go back to your environments, you can see the flows in your environment, and you can do, so let's pick on this guy. And there's my flows. It's just a different interface, so you can see the different owners, whether they're turned on or disabled. And then from here, if I wanted to say, what was I looking for before? I can't remember which one I was working on. But if I wanted to go to one of these guys and do something with it, I could come in here, go into the details, and see what connections it uses and which owners are in there. And if I had, this one's I think disabled, but some other ones, I think you can go in there and make changes here as well. All right. That's everything I have. We got a few minutes left, and I know it's been a long day, a lot of information. So again, if you have questions, or if you have questions later, you don't have to have questions now. I know a lot of people are like, wow, it's been a lot. Feel free to tweet me at david@epatrick.com. Make sure you do the survey. I see it out there in the chat. You win some money, you win some, no, maybe not money. I forget it's prizes. It's better than money, right? So I know I'm going to do mine because I want my hat to throw in the ring. Again, more information about my company. Looking for a job, let me know. I'd love to have you come work on the team. And thanks to everyone for joining, taking time out of your day. Thanks to the sponsors for making this possible, and thanks to the user group and our moderator who's been here, I think, all day doing a fantastic job. And we really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
David, thank you. Great presentation, great content. And again, as David mentioned, fill out the survey. You can win a Microsoft Surface Go as a grand prize. And I'll also be doing a random drawing right now for our $25 gift card each session. Give me 3 seconds to spin the wheel. And our winner is Jeff Thorpe. So Jeff, you'll get an email with a gift card to the email you used to register for this. Thank you all once again for joining us for the M365 Admin Day. We appreciate your attendance and your feedback, especially on the survey. Anything we can do to improve on this, the content, the format. We're hopefully going to shoot for some in-person options in the fall. That's to be determined. But thank you all for your time and your participation today. Have a great rest of the evening, and we will talk again soon.